We've got some serious and very, very sad and unfortunate news. There's been a string of bombings in Sri Lanka targeting high-end hotels, but it seems like the main target may have been churches. So I'm just going to go through some of the details. I've got a couple different tabs pulled up, and then, we'll just start from there. Let's just read the news. Let's just figure out what's going on. The New York Times says as worshippers gathered on Sunday at Roman Catholic churches across Sri Lanka to celebrate Easter Mass, the culmination of Holy Week, a wave of explosions rocked the congregations. At about 8:45 a.m., at least 8 bombing attacks struck at least 3 churches, along with 3 5-star hotels favored by foreigners, killing more than 200 people in what the police said had been a coordinated attack. A senior presidential aide said it appeared that the attacks had been carried out by suicide bombers. No group immediately claimed responsibility for the bombings, although I will add, we'll get to this, it is being reported by Time as well as local news, I believe local news in Sri Lanka, that they have been warned and on alert about a newly formed extremist Islamic group. So we'll get to that news. That's Time.com reporting. 7 people were detained in connection with the attacks, according to the defense minister. Sri Lanka blocked major social media and messaging services, including Facebook and WhatsApp, to curb misinformation, according to the president's secretary, Udaya Seneviratne. Apologies, A police official said 207 people had been killed and 450 people wounded. 27 foreigners were among the dead, the country's foreign minister said. Now, I believe the New York Times has photos of some of the blast sites. There absolutely are photos circulating showing the people who lost their lives. I'm not going to show any of that stuff, but just so you know, it's out there. So we can see a map here. Most of the bombings, my understanding, were in, let's just read. Images from the site of the bombings show bloodied and shattered pews and victims lying on the floor of houses of worship. The walls and windows of the targeted hotels were blown out. Some of the victims were killed as worshippers gathered for Mass at St. Anthony's Shrine in Colombo, the capital, St. Sebastian's Church in Negombo, about 20 miles north of Colombo, and Zion Church in the eastern city of Batacalo, officials said. The attacks also targeted high-end hotels in Colombo, the capital, including Shangri-La, the Cinnamon Grand, and the Kingsbury. So, we'll just do a little bit more. A police spokesman, Ruwan Gunasekera, put the death toll at 207. Mangala Samarawira, the Sri Lankan finance minister, called the explosions a well-coordinated attempt to create murder, mayhem, and anarchy. And we can see here another photo here. Now we have a statement from one of the witnesses, reported by the New York Times. They said they felt the blast all the way up to the 17th floor, where they were sleeping. A few minutes later, we were asked to evacuate the hotel while running down the stairs, saw a lot of blood on the floor, but we were still clueless as to what really happened. They've restricted social media. They're, shutting down. They say they're shutting down social media to prevent the spread of misinformation. That kind of thing always worries me. But I am also equally concerned with the potential for escalation when an attack like this happens on I believe, the holiest week for Catholics and Christians. Today is the day. It's Easter Sunday. So very, very, very likely, absolutely intentional what we're seeing here. Now, what do we know about the perpetrators? According to Time magazine, an official told AP that 2 of the blasts were suspected to have been carried out by suicide bombers. No one has stepped forward to claim responsibility. News agency AFP says it has seen documents that show the Sri Lankan police have been on the alert for several days, fearing that suicide bombers from a local radical Muslim group, the National Tawhid Jamaat, NTJ, were targeting prominent churches. AFP also reported that Sri Lankan police seized a haul of explosives and detonators in January after arresting 4 men from a newly formed radical Muslim group. A number of Sri Lankan Muslims were known to have joined ISIS in Syria, according to Reuters. So let's, I want to make sure we simmer tensions, but I'm not going to shy away from what we're seeing. Of course, we recently saw the horrific attack on Christchurch, where a mosque was attacked. These things, it's a cycle of hate that never ends. And I know this may seem a bit silly, but there are many, manga and anime shows that revolve around the idea of ending that cycle. You have to, if you keep seeking revenge, then that's all that will ever happen. Someone targets a church, and then someone goes and then targets the mosque, and they talk about how they're at war with each other. And that's kind of how it begins. What I will say is, it seems they don't have confirmation on this being the local radical Muslim group, but it's being reported by AFP, highly reputable source, and Time magazine, that the Sri Lankan police have been on the alert for suicide bombers. It's very, very likely this to be the case. But it's actually really, really a really contentious situation in Sri Lanka, because apparently sectarian violence is extreme, where there's even been violent Buddhists, which is, wow. They say, while the majority of Sri Lankans are Buddhist, just under 10% are Muslims and about 7.5% Christians. Hindus make up about 12.5% of the population. So what we're seeing here is the minority religion, Christianity, being specifically targeted, and people have lost their lives. Sri Lanka declared a state of emergency in March 2018 after Buddhist mobs attacked Muslim businesses, homes, and a mosque in the central city of Kandy. The BBC reported that a Muslim man was found dead in a burned-out building. The attacks were reportedly in retaliation for the earlier beating of a Buddhist by Muslim men. In recent years, hardline Buddhist groups, such as Bodo Bala Sena, otherwise known as the Buddhist Power Force, have been accused of stirring sectarian hatred in Sri Lanka. The BBS accuses Sri Lankans Muslims of threatening the nation's Buddhist identity and enjoys support at high levels of the political establishment. Now, that's actually something that's been happening in many places in Asia, with Buddhists rising up and actually getting violent and committing, in some instances, acts of terror. And it seems extremely counter to what Buddhism is about. But there have been statements from some Buddhists where they say that they're under attack and they're going to fight back. Now, in this instance, we can see that Christians were the target, and they're absolutely the minority here, at least according to what they're showing here. There's probably other religions for sure. But we can see Islam makes up a larger portion of the population than Christianity, and this was, by all available evidence, an attack on Easter Sunday. Now, I'll say a couple things. Listen, there are a lot of people that on YouTube will highlight issues like this. You know, the evidence seems to suggest it was an Islamic radical group. And we have to make sure we do everything in our power to make sure we need to not have violence, right? And I don't know exactly how you go about doing that, because naturally people are going to be upset. But when you have low levels of violence drum up, eventually becomes more extreme. And so what I'm trying to say is, most people of most religions are not getting violent, are not doing these things, and we need to make sure that we're not going to point the finger at everyone, and we have to do everything we can to simmer things down. I don't know if it's possible, because look at what we're seeing. I mean, in this instance, Christianity is the minority group in the region, and they're under attack with hundreds dead. It's going to result in someone, doing some kind of retaliation. This kind of thing is going to result in people, now just blaming the entirety of certain religions. And I get it. I do. I know there are a lot of news organizations that are already probably, like these left-wing digital outlets are probably already saying, we don't know, it's not, and they're going to point the finger at conservatives and the right, who points out, in all likelihood, that it was a local radical Muslim group. I mean, this is Time magazine. Okay, I'm not going to report this and just make things up. No, this is our best bet. We also have this source, which I believe, I'm not entirely sure what this is, but this is what Google shares, and I believe it is. Maybe it's not Sri Lankan. I'm not entirely sure. But this is also highlighting the same data. So the reason I show this site, I have no idea what it is. Maybe it's it looks like maybe a Jewish website. Okay, I think it's Israeli. Oh, it's the Israeli National News. Okay, there you go. And they say Sri Lanka intel warned of Muslim attack on churches. Officials warned previously that terror elements, including radical Islamic group NTJ, would carry out suicide attacks on churches. Okay, so I just want to make it clear, I'm not familiar with this. This came up on Google. One of the first things that pops up when you search for what's happening here. And so I just, that's why I'm showing it. I don't know what the site is, and I know that, some people are probably going to try and point the finger at me if it turns out to be something. No, it looks like a Jewish website. But I also want to point out a couple things. Donald Trump made this tweet early in the morning where he said 138 people, he said, we stand ready to help in reference to the Sri Lanka attack. Donald Trump did later go on to talk about the radical left Democrats. And I got to be honest, I don't really care. Donald Trump, made this tweet at 7:20 a.m. The reason I bring this up is that Oliver Darcy said, it's Easter Sunday, 450 are wounded and at least 207 are dead in Sri Lanka, and Trump is raging on Twitter about radical left Democrats. Okay. I also don't necessarily care about what Oliver Darcy is saying. But I'm highlighting these two tweets to show the partisan bickering that doesn't matter at a time like this. Okay, Donald Trump, in my opinion, look, this is not what we need to be talking about right now. I appreciate that, you know, he tweeted something like this. I recognize that he's very upset with the collusion narrative, but I think we should keep our focus today on the victims and what we can do for something, you know, for what's happening in Sri Lanka. And I think it's a conversation we should be focused on. So I'm not gonna come out and say, you know, do I really care? No, not really. And the same is true for Oliver Darcy. I don't really care he's tweeting this, but I think this is it's hypocritical. You know, it's ironic that he would be upset about Donald Trump tweeting about Democrats. He's tweeting back at Donald Trump when, yes, he even highlights himself. There's more things to worry about. So I'm not here to rag on either of, you know, Trump or Oliver, but just specifically to point out that we've got bigger things to be concerned about. Okay, we've got sectarian violence. We've got people who are in need of help. We've got people who are going to be mourning. And I'm sure the last thing we need to be talking about right now is the partisan nonsense, which is, you know, and again, I understand I brought it up. The only reason I bring it up is to ask people to kind of chill out when something. I understand we're not in Sri Lanka, but this is a pretty serious incident. Okay, this is, you know, I think it was 7 or 8 blasts, hundreds wounded, hundreds dead. Let's keep the focus on what we can do to help people in these situations, what we can do to keep things calmer. We don't need to be fighting each other all the time. We need to figure out how to stop the crazy people who are doing crazy things and hurting the innocent. People that have an absolute right to go to a church on their holiest day and practice their faith without obstruction, without violence. The same is true for any religion, and we should absolutely condemn any and all violence against any and all, you know, peaceful, innocent individuals who are minding their own business. And this is bad. I'm seriously concerned that an attack like this on Easter is going to dramatically escalate tensions, and that's the last thing we need. So I'll leave it there. To, you know, all my Christian friends, you know, sorry that something like this happened on Easter. I know there's a lot of people I'm following on Twitter who are devastated by this, especially following what happened with Notre Dame. This is the last thing that Christians and Catholics needed to see. So, you know, I'm sorry that you guys have to go through with this again. And to the people who are hurt, man, you know, I just kind of wish sometimes the worst problems we could have is political bickering. It would absolutely be great if, you know, come Easter Sunday, Oliver Darcy sends a mean tweet and everyone's like, how dare you? And that's the worst of it. So maybe, you know, sometimes I think about how outraged everyone gets over all this, all the cultural nonsense. And I think it's kind of funny because it's better that we have people arguing on the internet than people fighting in the streets. It's better that someone posts mean words on the internet than they go and commit a horrendous act. And so I hope as global violence goes down, these things become a relic of the past. And at the very least, you can have some mean words for each other on the internet. But I think that's the opposite. I think the censorship problem is going to result in people taking it to the streets. When they feel like they have no chance, no choice, and no voice, then you're going to see people getting angrier. And that's what really scares me. So, you know, ultimately, I think global violence has been on the decline for the most part. Our access to information makes us think that it's more prevalent than it really is. This is a serious incident, okay? So we can't downplay these things. And I hope to God in the future we see less and less of it until it's gone. But for the time being, let's keep our focus, thoughts and prayers, whatever we can, on helping the victims. And, you know, Donald Trump tweeted, we stand ready to help. And that to me is a little heartwarming. It is. I'd love to see the U.S. do what it can to aid anybody who needs assistance here. I'd be willing to, you know, help myself in whatever capacity. And, you know, there are stories about, like, after 9/11, small villages sending cows and stuff to the U.S. as aid and things like that, and that warms my heart. So I think hopefully the result of something like this is that all of the good, moral, calm, innocent, rational people of all faiths come together to condemn this kind of thing, and they are. And so that you know, but these things, man, hopefully they're on the way out. But it is what it is. You know, the world is a dangerous, scary place sometimes, and some people are just ready to be violent. So I'll leave it there. Thanks for hanging out. I'll have another video for you coming up at 1 p.m. Any updates, I will have more videos. And yeah, I'll see you later.